Okay, we're going to continue on our introduction of using the sum and difference formulas. And in our last video, we broke down and found the sine, cosine, tangent given a different angle. Now we're going to find some specific values. Let's say we were given given an angle. So let's say we're given cosine of negative 105. Okay, so here's an example of cosine of negative 1.5. Now we want to solve this and find the exact value or values of sine, cosine, value of sine, cosine without a calculator. Now 105 is not an easy angle. If you draw this, its reference angle is not even a 30, 60, or 45, so it's not a common basic angle that we know. However, the question you have to ask yourself, can you break down negative 105 into something that is our basic angle? And actually, you can. Cosine of negative 105, if you took this and you broke it down, and let's say you had a 5, so I'm going to break that down into 45. So if I had 105 and we took that and is there a 45 in there? And the answer is yes, there is. There's actually 60. We could actually write this down to negative 45 minus 60, and that right there would actually give us negative 105. So now the question is, what do we use? Well, there's a bunch of different ways of writing this out. Well, if you just take the standard, this is alpha, and let's just say we minus beta. We'll say beta is positive. Well, from here, we can write and say, okay, well, this would then be the difference, okay? We would use the cosine difference formula. So this would be a cosine difference. Our alpha, once again, is negative 45, and our beta is going to be positive 60, positive 60. So we're going to write it as, okay, cosine of negative 45 times cosine of positive 60 plus sine of negative 45 degrees times sine of 60 degrees. From here, we can break this down and say, okay, cosine, if we write this out, cosine of negative 45 is here. It's going to be negative 1, 1 to the radical 2. And 60 degrees is going to be right here, which is going to be 3, 1, and 2. Okay, so this is our 45, negative 45, and this is positive 60. So cosine of negative 45 is going to be square root of 2 over 2 times cosine of 60 is 1/2 plus sine of negative 45 is going to be negative square root of 2 over 2 because it's in the fourth quadrant for sine. And sine of 60 degrees is going to be square root of 3 over 2. Simplifying, we would have square root of 2 minus square root of 6 over 4, and that would be our answer. Let's try another one. But this time, let's use, all right, some radians. Now with radians, this pi over 12, what I like to do is sometimes break this up into some similar ones, and actually I like to think about it in degrees when I'm figuring this out. So what would this be in degrees? Well, if you don't know, pi over 12 is 180 divided by 12, which actually equals 15 degrees. And that is what we have there. So 15 degrees. Now, 15 degrees times 5, not 5 degrees, just times 5, apologize. All right, so 15 times 5 is going to equal 75 degrees, 75 degrees. So really, what we have here is a 75-degree angle. Okay, well, 75 degrees, once again, it has a 5. 75 degrees can actually be broken down into, if we take out a 45 out of here, 45 plus 30 degrees is actually going to give us 75 degrees. So we know that 45 is actually equivalent to pi over 4 plus pi over 6 for 30, and that would be our answer. So from here, we can write out sine of pi over 4 plus pi over 6. And so with this, we look up here and say, okay, what is the sum of sine, the sum of two difference? So here's our alpha. Here's our beta. And so we're going to write sine of pi over 4, which is 45, times cosine of pi over 6, which is 30 degrees, plus cosine of pi over 4, which is 45 degrees, times sine of pi over 6, which is 30 degrees, and that will give us our final answer. From here, we can take sine of pi over 4, which is 45, which is square root 2 over 2, cosine of 30 degrees. If we had 30-degree angle, if you're not sure what that is, I like to always draw a little tiny triangle. If we have 30 degrees right here, this would be 1 right equal 3 and 2. So cosine is going to be square root of 3 over 2 plus square root of 2 over 2. And then sine is going to equal 1/2. That can simplify to square root of 6 plus square root of 2 over 4. And that is our answer. Cool. If you want to try this one, okay, one more, just for good old measure and practice. We have this negative square root of 13 pi over 15 or over 12. Once again, you can pause this and try it out. See if you get the same answer as me. What I would do with this one is I would once again, this is pi over 12 is 15 degrees. So I would take that and multiply negative 13 times 15 degrees. And what we have is 15 times 13 is going to be 195. So negative 195 degrees. Okay. Negative 195 degrees. If you took 195 degrees, and you broke this down, you could actually say that this would be equal negative 45 degrees minus 150 degrees, like we had before. And so, what is that going to equal? Well, we know that negative 45 is going to be negative pi over 4. And negative 150, actually, 150 degrees is going to be right here. So we could either make it as negative, and it's going to be a 30-degree angle right there. So it's going to be negative 5 pi over 6. 5 pi over 6. So we could have negative 5 pi over 6 as our other answer. Same type of deal. We can go sine of negative pi over 4. All right, minus 5 pi over 6. This is going to be alpha. This is beta. Beta is going to be positive if you want to use the minus right there. So we take sine of that one. And I'm just going to write this one out, and I'll let you figure out all the other angles after you have it. But we would have sine of negative pi over 4. It would be cosine of 5 pi over 6. And then minus cosine of negative pi over 4. And then sine of 5 pi over 6. Solving this puppy. Going over here, sine is going to be negative square root 2 over 2. This is in the fourth quadrant. Cosine of 5 pi over 6. We have this right here. It's going to be right there. Okay. So cosine of pi over 6 would be 30, be 1 right equal 3 and 2 with negative right there. So cosine is going to be negative square root 3 over 2. And then we have minus square root of 2 over 2 because cosine of negative pi is positive. And then sine of that is going to be 1/2. Simplifying, square root of 6 minus square root of 2 over 4 would be our answer. Hopefully I did all my math right, but that's how you can break this up. So whenever I have radians, I usually break it into degrees, and then degrees helps me break it into back to radians. That's how I work. Hopefully that will help you as well. So once again, the basics of how to break out angles and how to use these to find sine and cosine and even tangent values, all right, of using the sum and difference rules.